were doing a lot of things right. You were going after God, and some people would say, yeah, but why would you continue to serve this good God, quote unquote, and he would allow, or whatever terminology you want to use, all these bad things to happen? Can you speak to that real quickly?
Sure. One of the things that we had to, and I did have, just being honest and transparent, I had very many seasons where I had unanswered questions. I didn't understand why God was allowing all of these attacks. But one of the things that we had to learn early on in this process was we realized that, you know what? Yes, there is a crisis in front of us, but that crisis is not the only reality in our lives. We have to zoom back out. Our human nature, when we have a crisis, human nature is to zoom in on that crisis and focus on nothing else but the crisis. We had to train ourselves to zoom back out and look at the other parts of our lives where God's blessing was flowing in amazing ways. And so when we look at the big picture, we see blessing, 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 but then we also see, okay, so there's a crisis. And even in the midst of the crisis, the fact that, yes, Colton was born with 5 heart defects. Yes, he's been through 6 open heart surgeries and a bunch of other heart procedures. Yes, he's suffered more than most people will ever suffer in their life, but he is living a healthy, happy, productive, wonderful life. And so we have to see the big pictures and say, okay, yes, he's been through a lot. Yes, Nancy did, Anna did, I have, but we're so blessed when we look at all of the good things that are still in our lives. And so we had to train I've got a little phrase here. You have to train yourself to gaze at the blessing and glance at the pain. And when you do that, it gives you the context of the whole picture. I mean, leaders that are listening to this podcast, they all know you don't want to just zoom in on one little segment of what's going on. You have to see the big picture. And if you don't see the big picture as a leader, you could lead the organization in the wrong direction. And so we have to zoom back out and look at the whole picture, the context. And earlier on, we learned, we understand that God's highest agenda for all of us is to be conformed to the image of Christ. And facing resistance is normal in this world. It's normal in life. And God uses that to strengthen us. I didn't want all of my family to suffer the way that they did, but I also see all the blessing that God has poured into our lives, and the fact that in the midst of all of this, we are still so blessed. We developed a culture of celebration. So you have to look at all of the picture. You can't just look at one thing at a time or one little crisis or whatever. And if you haven't, one of the greatest expressions of faith for those who are Christian, one of the greatest expressions of faith is to be able to continue to put one foot in front of the other when you don't understand your path.
Right.
As long as you know that you're doing what God's called you to do, and as long as you're trying to serve Him and you're trying to be obedient, there are going to be times when you don't understand your path. But it's a much greater expression of faith to continue to walk forward than it is just to fold your arms, get mad, and quit. Because if I think about it this later on, if I had allowed anger over the things that happened to my children to camp out in my heart, I would have probably become a person that I would not want to be, and I would have sown that anger into them. And so instead of now being grateful and thankful to God that they are even alive and living wonderful lives, they might be angry at the stuff that happened years ago. We all know people that have gotten stuck in a crisis that happened years ago and never really moved forward from that. And so this process of what I'm talking about frees you to move forward from a crisis and not allow it to wreck the rest of your life. Some people are ruined by crisis and storms, and other people are refined by them.
Sure.
So that's one of the main lessons that we learned, was that's one of the lessons of this book, is to help people understand how to navigate adversity in a way that will make you healthier. and not worse, stronger and not weak, better and not bitter.